Hey, friends, this is Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous, where we discuss pop culture through the lens of race or gender, and sometimes both. I'm your host, Julia Washington, and on today's show, I'm discussing the 2017 coming of age movie, Lady Bird. My guest today, you know her. She was here back in January to discuss Asian American representation in media. Amy Albertson is here.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be back, and I'm really excited to talk about Lady Bird because Lady Bird is my life on screen, basically.
Hey, friends, love our show, but hate the commercials. Become a Pop Culture Club member on Patreon for $10 a month to receive ad free episodes with bonus content, bonus episodes, a virtual meetup to discuss movies and television, and so much more. To learn more about how to become one of our Patreon pals, visit popculturemakesmejealous.com or visit the link in our show notes. This coming of age movie stars Saoirse Ronan, Laurie Metcalf, and Timothee Chalamate, and was released on September 1st, 2017. Written and directed by Sacramento native Greta Gerwig, Lady Bird takes place in the early aughts, the era of my own high school days. Lady Bird McPherson is artistically inclined, restless, and in regular conflict with her mother. But before we dive in, let me reintroduce you to my guest. Amy Albertson is a Jewish advocate and educator from California. While living in Israel for 6 years, she created The Asian Israeli, where she cataloged her experience as a Chinese American Jewish woman. She is an active online voice for mixed Jews, particularly highlighting her experience as an Asian American Jewish woman. She is the absolute perfect choice for this episode because her connection to Sacramento. Amy, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you from Sacramento, actually. No shame. I'm one of those pandemic people who moved back in with her parents. So
Yeah.
here we are.
I feel like that's a lot of people because the world's just cruel.
I feel like Lady Bird, if we were to have like a where's Lady Bird now, might be in my situation
Yeah,
somewhat.
yeah, 100%. Okay, so friends, this is not necessarily a spoiler-free episode, so if you haven't seen the movie, sorry, but we're going to give you a quick summary of the film so you have an idea of where we're going. And to be honest, I literally had nothing in me to write my own summary, so I pulled this from Google, and I apologize because it's Google. No offense to Google, but sometimes it's the not it's not the most deep and thoughtful or insightful summaries. A nurse works tirelessly to keep her family afloat after her husband loses his job. She also maintains a turbulent bond with her teenaged daughter, who is just like her, loving, strong willed, and deeply opinionated. So you understand now why I prefaced it with it's Google. It's a Google.
That's such a weird summary because it's centered on the mom, but the
Yeah.
movie is
All
about
about Lady
Lady Bird,
Bird.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. I thought that was interesting too. But the headlines and reviews in 2017, we're going to give you a quick highlight. The New Yorker ran a headline, Greta Gerwig's exquisite, flawed Lady Bird. The New York Times headline, Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird is big screen perfection. Vox's headline said, Lady Bird is not just one of 2017's best films, it's a beautiful, hilarious act of love. In Vox's review, writer Alyssa Wilkinson had this to say. There's a remarkable amount of depth beneath this apparently conventional arc. In Lady Bird, Gerwig has taken the familiar teenage girl coming of age plot and turned it into something rather extraordinary and carefully observed the kind of movie that actually reveals layers on repeated viewing. It's not too often that we get a coming of age story that takes place in a city like Sacramento. And while Sac and Modesto are worlds apart, there are enough similarities that makes this film even more special to those who spent their adolescence in this part of California. So, I'm going to start with the most obvious question. What was your overall impressions of this film?
I loved it. I mean, I think those headlines definitely are doing it justice. It's a great film, not just because I can relate to it on many more levels than probably the majority of viewers based on my life experience, which we'll get into, but I think it's also just, it has, so I'm kind of a sucker for like an indie feel. And I feel like it has a bit of that indie feel, like Greta
Yeah.
Gerwig kind of has that, but this is not a low budget film. Like it has big names and it has high production, but it kind of still has that, which I really enjoyed. And I think that sometimes with indie films, there's like a lot of times a level of like, they're just not there yet. They have a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of like that missing piece, but I felt like this had the indie feel, but it was there, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes any sense. So
Mm-hmm.
on those levels, I just think it's a great movie.
I agree with you. I love that it had the indie feel. I think that's what made it feel so authentic in its storytelling too, because if you have and they kind of do that, well, not they, I feel like movie studios kind of do that generally, or they try to do that generally with coming of age high school stories. Like when
Yeah.
I think of like The Perks of Being a Wallflower, and
Yes.
um they tried to do it with Love, Simon, but and there's like different it's not the same as when they were making movies like 20 years ago about high school. They definitely try to give it that, I don't know, authentic raw feel.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because as the high schooler of like me being like Lady Bird or her friends, I would be into indie films. I was so cool. I would go to Tower all the time to the
Yes.
movies, Tower Theater, which they show many times,
Mm-hmm.
Sacramento staple. And like, I'm like, yeah, even like a blockbuster film, we'd be like, well, is it playing at the Tower? Let's go to the Tower. It's like, why do we want to go to the Tower? It has way older, shittier equipment. The seats are just like springy and creaky and not as good, and they smell musty. Like, why are we so pretentious? But anyway, I think that adds a layer to like why I love the film, because I would have wanted an indie film in that time as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I love that. So did you relate to Lady Bird herself, or one of the other characters?
So it's really interesting because when I originally watched it, I definitely was like, oh wow, like I lived Lady Bird's life. So in Sacramento, there are three Catholic high schools. Greta Gerwig went to one of them, which is St. Francis, which is what I think it's called Immaculate Heart
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the movie is based on. And then there's Jesuit, which is the boys' high school. And then there's a third one that's not really mentioned, which is Christian Brothers. And that's actually where I went to high school. Um, so I
Oh.
went to Catholic high school in Sacramento, which is very much a part of this. Like, they show them having mass together with the
Hmm.
boys. So there's often like once a year a big mass with all three schools
Oh my gosh.
at the cathedral in downtown Sacramento. And so literally like everything about it was just so matched up to my life.
Hmm.
So I always thought I related to Ladybird, but then upon watching it again for this podcast, I was like, wow, I think I'm maybe like more of a Julie, or I'm somewhere in between Ladybird
Oh.
and Julie, because the thing that Julie does a lot that I really was like, oh, I think I'm the Julie and not the Ladybird, is she's constantly putting herself as like second place.
Mm.
When they talk about like when they see Danny for the first time and she's like, Ladybird's like, look at him, and Julie's like, yeah, you should go for it because I could
Yeah.
never. And that's me. I used to call myself the underachiever of the overachievers because I was like in the advanced classes, because this was like a college prep high school. That's why I went there. And I was in the highest level of classes, but I was the one who was like scraping by. All
Mm.
of my friends were so genius smart. Like, yeah, so I feel like I a lot of times was like Julie and putting myself as like the second best to everyone else, to the Ladybirds, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah. It's like that scene when the math teacher's like, I lost my math book, so I need you guys to tell me what your grades are. And she's like, I have a B, Ladybird. And he's like, are you sure? It's more like a
Yeah.
B minus, maybe like a C plus. She's like, nope, it's a B.
Well, and Julie's like an A minus, and he's like, I think it was an A, and she's like, if you say so.
Yeah, yeah. Beanie Feldstein, right?
Love her,
She's
love,
so good
love
in it.
her,
Yeah.
love her.
I loved her in Booksmart. Oh my
Yes, okay,
gosh.
Booksmart is such a good movie, but we don't need to go on. We
Yeah,
could go
we
on a
can't.
whole
Yeah.
episode about Booksmart. I love that movie.
Yep. Yeah. I took my son to see it and I was like, was that awkward for you to watch that with your mom? And he was like, no, it's fine. It's like, okay, cool.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I also I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in. I totally related to Lady Bird, her desire to, her restlessness and her desire to get out and sort of like um there's that scene where the guidance counselor's like,
Oh my
you
gosh.
surprisingly have high SAT scores.
Yeah.
But her grades aren't great, and they're like, yeah, go to state school, that'll be so good for you. And she's like, I'm not, the whole fuck UC Davis, I'm not going to UC
Yeah.
Davis. Like, that was like, there was so much passion behind that emotion, and that's how I felt about CSU Stanislaus, which is like near ish where I am. It's like, I don't want to go to Stan State. What's the point of going off to college when you're gonna just go 20 minutes away? Like, I don't get that.
I mean, that was a huge sentiment in for everyone I went to school with. It was like a joke in our school that if you went to Chico State, that's where like people who couldn't actually get into a school to go away would go to Chico State to go away, in air quotes that no one can see me doing right now.
Right.
But um
Because it's
but
like a couple hours, right? It's like an hour and a half
yeah,
from
it's like
Sac.
an hour and a half, and it's like you can go to Sac State or Sac City. And sorry for anyone who feels like it's weird for me to say Sac, but for Sacramento people, it's very normal.
It's very normal.
Something I didn't learn until I left Sac and was like, Old Sac.
And people are like,
East
what?
Sac. And
What's
we're
an
like,
old
ha ha
Sac?
ha ha ha. Yeah. So yeah, exact same sentiment. It's like everyone's like, if you don't go to college away and like away, then you're like nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And poor Julie is like, I'm just going to go to Sac City.
Yeah.
It's just going to be fine. And, Lady Bird's over here, like, where can I go that's the farthest away from Sacramento?
I mean, well, yeah, and like when Lady Bird like drops the Yale bomb on the college counselor, she's like Yale, but like obviously not Yale because I know I couldn't get in there, but you know what I mean. It's just like, Lady Bird, you're a few degrees away from Yale, even. Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah. Oh, I just love her. This episode is brought to you by Hues by Jules. Hues by Jules offers custom artwork and original prints, specializing in watercolor, focusing on the human form and different shades of skin. If you're looking for that perfect gift for a birthday or have a special memory you'd like to commemorate, visit Hues by Jules on Instagram or find the Etsy shop of the same name. That's Hues, HUES by Jules, JULS. For some of us, maybe many of us, especially those of us who graduated high school near the time this film takes place. So it's over the course of 2002, 2003. Lady Bird graduates high school in 2003. Just a reminder to all of our friends at home, I graduated high school in 2002. So it, for me, felt like Greta Gerwig perfectly captures the tone of this era. But anyone who attended private religious school who was creatively inclined or generally restless and ready to move on in life will find camaraderie in this story, I think. I want to talk a little bit more about the private religious school experience. The Hollywood Reporter offered this sentiment in the review. The Catholic school experience is rendered with hilarity, but again, without meanness, and even with a sprinkling of generosity. The senior nun on the staff, the wonderful Lois Smith, cuts through the BS to be real with Lady Bird, and great fun is had with the school's theater productions. When the original faculty director of The Tempest bails out, he's replaced by the school's football coach, a loudmouth. I forgot about the scene, and then when we watched it, I was dying. A loudmouth who rambunctiously illustrates how the Shakespearean drama will be staged by diagramming a chalkboard with X's and O's and firmly drawn arrows. Such a funny scene.
It is such a funny scene, and it gave me like the vibes of like the coach in Mean Girls who's teaching sex ed. And also it's extremely accurate because I was taught driver's ed by PE coaches.
Oh my gosh.
That's who it's just like I don't understand. Is that like a thing in schools where it's like any extra random topics they just like give it to
The football
PE
coach.
coaches
Yeah.
or football coaches, athletic coaches?
That's not been my experience with private religious school. So the private religious school I went to wasn't Catholic.
Oh.
It was Christian. And I say that weirdly. But we didn't have like our PE teachers were our teachers. Like they weren't a separate entity. I
Oh.
also didn't go to high school in the private religious sector. Like
Oh,
by the
okay.
time like the end of 7th grade, I was like, get me out of this shit.
Yeah.
I just can't anymore. Um Actually no, halfway through 8th grade I was like, I'm done, I can't anymore, this is like awful, send me to public school. But with the whole comment that Laurie Metcalf's character says, Miguel saw somebody knifed in front of the
Oh,
school, you
yes.
have to go to Immaculate Heart. I guess I'm just like curious, like tell me more about the high school experience in Sacramento. And because that's Laurie Metcalf's worry that
Yeah.
Lady Bird's gonna get caught up in something. That's
Get
why she has
knifed.
you get knifed. That's why she has to go to the Catholic school, but they don't seem like a religious family. And so my experience was we had people who sent their kids to the school because they thought it was safer and they weren't religious. So they, made a ruckus during chapel.
So, at least in Sacramento, the Catholic schools are like the most like academically advanced. So that's why
Oh,
I went, because I'm Jewish.
yeah.
As my bio said 300 times, Jewish girl, Jewish, 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 Jewish. So I'm Jewish, but I went to this Catholic high school, and actually there were a number of Jews there. And that's just
Interesting.
because it was college prep.
Yeah.
So I was like big, nerdy, academically inclined all through everything. And then ironically, when I went to high school, I was like, I hate school now. But yeah, so I was like, Mom, Dad, can I apply to this private Catholic high school? And they're like, if that's what you want to do, like, okay, apply. And I got in, and then I went there, and that was that. But um yeah, the other schools are just not known to be as academically advanced. And I guess, yeah, there's like a stigma on public school in Sacramento, and I guess in a lot of places, probably in America. My brother went to the local public high school. He was like, hell no, I'm going to Catholic school.
Oh, that's funny. That's interesting. And I actually, when you brought up, was it the Jesuit school, right?
Jesuit, yeah, it's the
Yeah,
boys' school.
they advertise on TV a lot, or they
Oh,
used
do
to.
they?
Yeah, when I was doing freelance and I was home all day and I'd have TV on in the background as just like stuff moving so I didn't feel alone in the house.
Mhm.
They were a commercial that would run pretty much all during daytime television.
Well, yeah, because that's the other thing is like in a lot of sports, it's kind of like colleges, like for sports purposes, they can be really good because they can like give scholarships to athletes.
That makes sense. Central Catholic is a Catholic school here. It's that's not true. Does our They might be the only Catholic high school in town. And they kind of they don't, well, I shouldn't say it like this, but they go and like recruit
Yeah,
some of
they
the better
do.
players to have on their team. And some of those people who've played on those team, played for Central Catholic have gone on to, get really good college educations because of sports scholarships. I don't know if anybody's gone pro though. I don't think.
I've People I went to high school with play in the NFL.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah. They're not
That's
like stars, but
But
they are.
still, the fact that
Yeah.
the fact that you make it is kind of a big deal,
Yeah.
I think. That's wild.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, and then there's people like Greta Gerwig, right? Like she went to one of these schools.
Mm-hmm.
And she's Greta Gerwig, and she made this movie.
Yeah, she's made amazing movies. Like when she
Yeah.
did, like we covered Little Women during Christmas, and I was just so angry that like
Oh, I
she
forgot
made.
she did that. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, yes, I love that movie.
She made the Little Women I wanted to make had I gotten out of the Central Valley, which clearly we all can see that I did not.
Greta, hire Julia.
Yeah.
Get her
some
out.
sometimes I feel like we have the same brain because when watching, I'm watching Lady Bird for the first time, and in 2017 I was 34. That sounds right. And I was like in a really hard place because a lot of people I had gone to art school with and a lot of people I'd gone to high school with, and we were all in these artsy fartsy programs together, were like actually starting to make waves in their chosen industry and a little bit more famous. Like they're, nobody knows who they are necessarily, but I see that they're winning
Mm-hmm.
Emmys. I see that they're working
Oh.
on these things. And I'm just like, fuck my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
not that I want to win all the awards, but to be in a creative industry, to be like on such a large
Yeah.
scale of storytelling, and to know that we went to school together. So it was like, you got to cultivate your craft. And I am still writing like I'm 12. That's not true. But that's what it feels like. So I'm
Yeah.
sobbing through the whole entire movie because
Oh
I
no.
felt like, oh my God, I felt like that because my sophomore year, I was done with high school. I said to my parents, please let me take the GED and I'll go to the junior college and then I'll
Oh.
transfer to a 4 year. And they said no. And then
Oh
after that, I
no.
was like, fuck this shit, I'm out. And I just really did not. My senior year, I dropped out of all the advanced classes into general ed. That shit was so fucking easy. I was like, people were struggling in my English class, and I'm like, how are you struggling? Like, I didn't even read the work, and I still got an A on the essay. Like, this is not hard. And so it just kind of, Lady Bird was kind of like this is the alternative universe that you could have had your parents been more supportive about you being bored at school.
Oh no.
Sorry,
I
mom,
mean,
I know you're listening.
I mean, I was like a little similar to you in that like I was art, what did you call it? Like
Artsy fartsy.
artistically
Oh
inclined,
yeah.
artsy fartsy. Cuz yeah, I was like in AP art and stuff like that. And actually, and so it's also funny cuz Lady Bird only gets into theater in her senior year.
Yeah.
So I also my senior year started painting sets for the plays.
That's
And so
awesome.
I like started to have these new like theater friends because I was like a floater in high school. I would like float around to different
Mhm.
groups. I was friends with a lot of different groups because I went to middle school at like a big middle school. But anyway, yeah, so just like Lady Bird, I started like getting into the drama department only in my senior year. And like you, I by my senior year I was like, I'm going to art college, so I don't care about AP English, even though I did take AP English. And I became legendary because I threw the test and they give the essay to the teachers to read. And my teacher had 100% pass rate for years. And me and one other person failed. And my essay, literally, I wrote for 2 hours. I was like, I don't care about this test. I just really don't feel like it. I'm really preoccupied with my APR portfolio. So instead, I'm going to give you a synopsis of what happened on Gossip Girl this week. And I
Yes.
wrote for 2 hours about what happened on Gossip Girl. And this teacher, God forbid she or anyone that knows her listens to this podcast, but she went on to like tell on the first day of AP English for like years now, she tells everyone, if you are not in this class to take it seriously, leave the class, because I had a student who da 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 da, and everyone, like my friends' younger siblings were like, Amy, was that you? I'm like, yep, that was me.
Gosh, I fucking love that story. And I'm like, there's a reason why we connected. There's another reason why we've connected. There's that spirit. I love that spirit. I mean, I shouldn't maybe encourage people to have that spirit because there
Yeah.
is like rules and structure and order for a reason. But I feel like at the same time, like when a teenager is telling you, I'm fucking bored, this sucks, like you need to hear them, because in my case, that's when I start to self-destruct and start doing things that are like
Hmm.
really bad for me.
Well, that's another
Um,
reason why I like sort of was seeing myself as a Julie the second time around,
mhm,
because there's the scene at the end about where she's like not going to prom
mhm,
and she's like, what's wrong? She's like, I don't know, I'm just sad, I just get like that.
mhm.
And so I was kind of like, oh, there's that like depression that I thought was teen angst as a teenager, but now I've realized, no, Amy, you actually, have mental health challenges. And it's so interesting because at the time when I first watched it, I guess I didn't realize like I was relating to Julie, but this time I was like, oh, yep, that was me.
And what's great about Julie's character is she's so happy and so friendly and so chipper and so just matter of fact through the whole thing. You just can't help but love her. When Lady
Yeah.
Bird auditions for the play and she puts Lady Bird in quotes, and then
Mhm.
Julie puts her Julie in quotes, and she's like,
Loved it.
Julie's not a nickname. She's like, well, yeah, it is, because my name's whatever her, Julianne or something like
Yeah.
that. And, she just loves Lady Bird so much.
I know.
And then that transition that she makes, for what that Lady Bird makes, from hanging out with Julie all the time to like the cool kids.
Oh, I hated it. I hated that. I was just so angry at her.
Mm-hmm. And that girl, the girl that she was friends with, was just like, the new one was just
Jenna.
like, oh, yeah, that's it, Jenna. Thank you.
The actress is actually Israeli.
Really?
Yeah, her name is Odaya.
I wondered
Odaya
how
Rush.
Oh, thank you. I was looking at her IMDb and I was like, I have no idea how to pronounce this. I need to type it into Google and give me the pronunciation. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. I thought she did a great job
Yeah.
at being that character. And just Lady Bird just lying through her teeth about like who she is and like
Yeah, and her
where
house.
she lives. Can you tell us a little bit about the Fab 40s?
Okay, yes.
Such a fabulous neighborhood.
Yeah, so definitely. So I can relate to Lady Bird a bit on the like, oh, I don't live in these rich neighborhoods and whatever. I was not like, I will admit that I was not as financially challenged, we'll say, as Lady Bird's family, thank God. But yeah, a lot of my friends, I grew up like hanging out at people's houses in the Fab 40s, and I'd be like, yeah, mom and dad, I'm going to the Leathers' house, and like their dad just got a Maserati. And I touched it. Like, I remember I was like, we can't drive it, but can I touch it? And my friend's like, I guess. Like, like 14-year-old me is like, oh my God. Yeah, and like I grew up with these kids that lived in these neighborhoods. So the Fab 40s are in East Sacramento, and it's basically, the 40th to 50th, but really it kind of starts more at like 38 to like 45. But anyways, it's like the big houses, like huge houses, and those ones that they show in it was funny because this time I was paying attention to like see if I saw any of my friends' houses, but they didn't film on their streets, I guess. So but yeah, they're just like these rich people. And it's so there's one line where Jenna's character, they're in the pool, and she says, oh, like Lady Bird lies and says she lives in the Fab 40s, and she says she lives in the big blue house that's actually Danny's grandmother's. And then Jenna's character's like, that's so great, the Fab 40s is where our starter house was, like now we live in Granite Bay, which is hilarious if you know like the context of this. And I was just cracking up. Like, oh my goodness,
that was such a great scene because in addition to that, which I love those little nuggets throughout the movie, because there's a lot of that for people who are like local to the area. But there's also that moment too where Lady Bird's just talking about how she like can't wait to get out and blah blah, and Jenna's like, I don't know, I'm happy here, I can have a couple kids and it's fine. And Lady Bird's just like, what?
Yeah, she's like, ew.
Like, yeah,
kind
like
of with her face.
Yeah. And I kind of loved that because I feel like a lot of times when you live in a city like Sacramento, and Modesto is a big small town, you kind of get comfortable with what and you don't necessarily think that you can do a little bit better or a little different or what have you. And that scene was so great to me, one, because of the comment about the starter house thing, but then two, because of the moment when Lady Bird's like, not everybody wants to get the fuck out.
Yeah. Well, and it's also really like that. Like so many people I went to high school with are like legacy families, generations,
That's
3-4 generations of families that go to these Catholic high schools. A lot of high school sweethearts, a much higher percentage of people who are still friends with the people they were friends with in high school. I thought, also, again, God forbid anyone from my high school listens to this. I'm not really friends with anyone I went to high school with that much anymore. And when it first started happening, I felt bad. I thought there was something wrong with me because the model I was shown was that like everyone stays friends with their high school friends. And then I started to meet other people, in general that are not from this environment. And they're like, no, Amy, I'm not friends with anyone I went to high school with.
Yeah.
Because I'm not the same person I was in high school.
Yeah, seriously. Truly, it's like that here, sort of. I've actually removed myself from that sort of situation, but my son's dad's side of the family, they have been here for a couple generations. Everybody knows who who they are.
Yeah.
They know the kids, all the kids know each other, and now there's grandkids and all the grandkids know each other. And I'm over here like, I can't do that.
Yeah, I think I have basically one really close friend from growing up, and that's because we went to school
Mhm.
together since we were like 12. But other than that, I felt so much guilt when I started to part ways with my high school
Mm,
friends.
interesting.
And that's because everyone around me was still friends with their high school friends, and I was like, is something wrong with me? But like, no, most people actually don't necessarily stay friends with their high school friends like that.
Truly. Are you on Instagram? Are you following us on Instagram? Find us at Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. That's where we have all of our conversations post show drop. And we want you to be a part of it. We want to know, what do you think of the show? What do you think of this week's episode? Did you agree? Did you disagree? We won't know any of those things until you go over to Instagram. Give us that follow and start having a conversation with us. We can't wait to talk to you there. Find us on Instagram at Pop Culture Makes Me Jealous. Looking forward to talking with you. Throughout the movie, it is very clear Lady Bird McPherson wants out of Sacramento, and the sooner the better. But her mother isn't so sure about her daughter's future. Overwhelmed and burdened by the family's financial situation, Marion wants to support her daughter, but is practical in doing so, which sadly for Lady Bird, or Lady Bird translates it as feeling not only unsupported, but also misunderstood. I felt that in my core, if I'm going to be honest. Like that dynamic got really hard for me sometimes.
Hmm.
So much of my high school experience was just buying time until I could get out and away and be free, find my people on the social spectrum, but not a lot of people feel that insane pull to escape. So I want to talk and explore about that a little bit because like you mentioned earlier, a lot of people are generational in Sacramento. So having grown up there and being a creative person yourself, did you feel that pull to escape? And was it as strong as Ladybird's?
I don't know if mine was as strong as Ladybird's, but I certainly was like, well, I went to college in California at first, and then I, sorry, I'm going to drop this bomb on you. I graduated from high school in 2009, which was right when there was like the housing crisis and
Yeah.
the economy just tanked. So I couldn't so basically I went to private art college in California my first semester, and then I dropped out. I'm an art school dropout. And then I wanted to transfer to a California school, but I couldn't because they wouldn't let you transfer till you were a junior.
Oh.
So I ended up going out of state, and I went to Portland, Oregon, which is a whole other thing.
I did know that
But
you went to PSU. Yeah.
yes, I went to PSU. And but no, I think I was a little bit more Julie about it because, Julie's like, I'm just going to go to Sac City. And I was kind of like, if I can take advantage of the California school system, like I will. But I was very much like, I don't want to go to Berkeley and I don't want to go to Davis.
Like
And I wasn't going to
Ladybird.
go to, yeah. And I was like, I'm not going to Chico, So I did apply to some state schools. But I think it's really interesting because I had a friend who was like, she even looked like Lady Bird. She didn't go to my Catholic school, but she actually, they don't say what neighborhood Lady Bird lived in, but I'm pretty sure based on the bridge that they show, and she says that she lives, yeah, I'm pretty sure she lives in the same neighborhood that my friend did. And this girl, I don't want to name her, but this girl, it's like it's like Voldemort. This girl was like, I want to get the F out of here. I'm gonna go. And she did go to New York also. She went to the new school. God only knows how she got in there. I'm so mean. She really like fucked me over in high school socially. So I have like
Yeah, I know. I have a couple of those where I'm just like, how did you manage to make your life work out better than I managed to make my
I
life but work
well,
out
yeah,
better?
it's like, and also I don't even know if she made her life work out better than me. She just like
Mhm.
did end up going to New York and stuff, but I realized that she's deeply unhappy. We don't need to talk about this, but I realized that she's like deeply unhappy because she's a bad person.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was like very much like Lady Bird. So I definitely like watched that. Like watching Lady Bird
Mm-hmm.
was like watching her.
Yeah.
Where she's like, Mom and Dad, like, make it happen. Like, I am getting out of here and I'm going
Yeah.
to New York. I'm going to the new school. And it was just like, she was just like, I don't care what you do. Like, take out a second mortgage, sell your kidney. I'm going. Like, make it happen.
You make a lot of money for with the kidney on the black market, apparently.
Probably. Don't do that.
Yeah,
We're not
please don't.
condoning it.
It's not safe. It's not safe. Like, follow the rules in that regard. Like, everybody, please. It's interesting because, you know, Lady Bird makes that comment about, oh, I'm from the other side of the tracks. And then when she starts dating Danny and he comes to pick her up and he's like,
Oh, yeah.
she said she lived on the other side of the tracks, but it's funny because I actually did cross train tracks to get here. But he's just making an innocent observation
Yeah.
because he's a kid and like,
Well, it's also funny because he never crossed the train tracks before. He didn't even know where she was talking about because he didn't go there.
Yeah. And then when he says this in front of her mother, she's like,
Oh, yeah.
you can see it's like Laurie Metcalf's face said, the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, you know, but she's still going to be polite and respectful in front of this kid. And so she's so deeply offended and heartbroken. And this time around, Laurie Metcalf's struggle of like, I got the sense that she was disappointed in the way that her life panned out because she makes that comment about like, we didn't think that we were going to live in this house for 25 years. Like, we make all these sacrifices so you can have all of these things, yada, yada. And it's just those little tiny things that parents feel like are they're digs, but they're not necessarily digs.
Yeah.
It's just kids don't know any better. You don't know any different at 16. You get taken to Thanksgiving in the Fab 40s with your boyfriend.
Yeah.
And you think that's better. You know, it's like you don't know all the nuances and the difficulties of life at that point. Or at least you shouldn't anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, the summary that you gave centered on the mom. I don't remember her name, but we'll go with Laurie Metcalf because she's the actress. And she plays the mom so well, even though like I hate her, like not Laurie Metcalf, I hate the mom character. Because like, you know, when I'm watching it, I'm like, I'm Lady Bird, and so she plays the mom so well in this way, but she's like mean. She is real, like, and I understand she's going through it because now the adult me who's watching the Lady Bird me like having that weird interaction with the mom while I'm watching is just like, okay, Mom, I get it. You're like financially burdened. Your daughter is like a bitchy teenager at sometimes. You know, your son and his girlfriend like live on your couch. Your husband's losing his job, all these things. Wow, nobody watched this if you don't want a spoiler alert. I just told you everything. But
not everything. There's still some things that we haven't discussed. I mean, like we said that Timothee Chalamet is in this movie, but we have yet to get to
we're gonna get to Timothee Chalamet. So, but yeah, so like Laurie Metcalf's character, like when she says when Lady Bird's like throwing her little fit, and she says, "I'm gonna write down a number. I'm gonna make so much money, then I'm gonna pay it back, and I'll never talk to you again." And her mom's like, "You'll never get a job good enough to make that much money." I was like, whoa, that's some shade right there.
Right? Yes. So from the jump, she was like that to her. It just it just progressed, right? Like that was like the crux of it. But throughout the whole film, she said she's throwing shade at her, like, you know, oh, you think you can get into that college? No, like you can get into a state school, maybe, kind of stuff. And that's not what you want to hear when you're like an adolescent. Like your parents supposed to be in your corner, on your team, regardless of what your status is.
Yeah.
Cool. Like they're supposed to be your cheerleaders, but she's so practical and so pragmatic that it feels oppressive.
I know, but I think that maybe it's her projecting of like, she knows that she's not able to give that to Lady Bird. So instead of it being her fault, she's trying to make it like, well, Lady Bird, you're just not going to get into that school. So we don't even need to talk about the fact that I can't pay for it.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. And then when it's like, oh, you don't even know what it's like to have a terrible mother. I was raised by an abusive alcoholic. And then
Oh
she'd slam the
yeah,
door. And you're
yikes.
just like, oh.
It's like, Mom, you need a therapist. Please stop.
Mm-hmm. And she works in a psychiatric ward. So
I
you think that
know,
she
I
would like,
know. Yeah. Oy.
oh man. Oh man. Though this movie does make me want to reread The Grapes of Wrath because the opening
I
scene for
love that book. I
it's
love
so
Steinbeck.
me too.
Yes. Oh, there's so many reasons why we're like on the same page.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Steinbeck and I loved reading and it's funny because the second time I was watching it, I didn't remember that the opening scene was The Grapes of Wrath, but as soon as I heard the words, I was like, I think they're listening to The Grapes of Wrath. And I was like, yes. It's like on Jeopardy when you get the answer right.
Yes. I totally forgot too. And I pulled a review and I was like, why don't I remember this? I feel like I would have remembered. I remember the Joan Didion quote, right? Because everyone in every review talked about the Joan Didion quote. May she rest in peace. I literally burst out in tears when I heard that she passed. And so I remembered that, but then I read a review that was like, oh, and it opens with them crying at the Grapes of Wrath. And I was like, what? How did I not remember that? So this time around, I was like getting emotional with them. I was like, oh, I need to reread it. It's so good.
I wonder if I even have that book on my I must.
But yeah. We didn't even touch on Timothee Chalamet yet.
Whoa, okay, we have to talk about Timothee Chalamet because this is one of the other I saw the movie in the movie theaters when it came out with my grandma.
Oh, I love that. Oh,
who doesn't live yeah, and she doesn't live in Sacramento, but we got out of the movie and my grandma's like, "Did you like it?" And I said, "Grandma, I just watched my life on the movie screen, the theater, whatever. I can't speak. I just watched my life before my eyes." And she's like, "What?" And I was like, I'm sorry, Grandma, I'm just gonna be frank with you, but like, even the boy she lost her virginity to, that's the boy I lost my virginity to. Like, literally, I'm telling you, Julia, the conversation about rolled cigarettes.
Oh my gosh.
I had that conversation.
I love that.
This boy, Luke, who is now a woman, by the way.
Good for Luke.
Yeah, good for Luke, which I also was like, oh, and then there's Danny, who's actually gay. And like,
Danny's storyline broke my heart.
I know. Poor.
I had friends in high school who couldn't come out and it just wasn't safe and it wasn't okay and people weren't going to get it. And so, 5 years later, they come home and they're like, hey, I'm gay. I'm like, no, I knew. I'm glad that you now know and can feel safe to say it. And when I talk to my kids' generation about that kind of stuff, they're like, what? I'm like, no, seriously, like the gay kids weren't allowed to be gay. It wasn't anything that we implemented. It was like the structure of society. It's so sad. There's a reason why we're fucked up.
Well, and Catholic school on top of that is just like really hard. So Prop 8 was happening when I was graduating from high school.
That's right.
So some people could vote. And so the senior class always has a big mass at the big, I was about to say the synagogue, oh dear, at the big cathedral in Sacramento, and the like bishop or diocese or whatever of Sacramento will give the sermon. And he literally just gave us all a whole talk about how a lot of you are going to be starting to be able to vote, and you need to think about, as good Catholic people, like what you're going to vote. And people were so mad. They were like, weren't you supposed to encourage us about the future? And instead you just gave us a political opinion. Like, fuck you. Yeah, but Timothee Chalamet, let's get back to the juice. So,
he's so cute.
Whoa, this character was, it's so funny because this is where I related to Lady Bird. That was like the caricature of all the boys I had a crush on until after probably college. Like skinny, lanky,
always reading,
musician, pretentious, reading like Catcher in the Rye or like Albert Camus or something really pretentious. And like, I smoked rolled cigarettes and gave me the whole spiel about why smoking rolled cigarettes is better for you.
Yeah.
I was just like, maybe don't smoke at all. I don't know.
Yeah, that's probably actually the best for you.
I was just like, okay, yeah. Everyone told me don't make out with smokers, but too late.
Sometimes they're just sexy. It's hard. I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny because I lived in
A former smoker. It's so
I mean,
hard.
it's funny because so yeah, like this first boy I was ever like, boys didn't like me in high school that I knew of. Luke was the first person to like express liking me more than just a friend. So it was like,
Aw.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so him and then like, when I lived in Israel, everyone smoked. So at some point I was kind of like, do I like
Mm.
kissing smokers? Is that what's happening here? Is that we like I was like a complex. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um but Timothee Chalamet, so he's kind of mysterious in this movie because he
Mm-hmm.
has the whole thing with his dad,
And
and
we
he
get a
talks.
small glimpse of that later in the movie, but he does, kind of compare everything to what his family's suffering is in a
And
way.
where's his mom?
I don't know if we ever saw
We
her.
didn't see her, but and he doesn't talk about her either. But I'm just thinking,
Mm-mm.
like, if your dad is, drooling in a chair with oxygen, where you must have a mom
Yeah.
somewhere doing something, right? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It was just
Mm-hmm.
such an odd. He's like such a mysterious character, and I just want to know more about him.
Yeah. That scene when they're at the party and he's sitting out by the pool, smoking, reading.
He always has his book.
Oh, it drove me fucking nuts that he would
I,
bend it back like that. It's just
Yes,
like,
and as soon as they stop having sex, he picks up the book
yes.
immediately. It's like he
Yeah.
can't not have the book.
Yeah. He's the guy when you're all 30 that he hasn't changed. He's still doing that. But it's weirder now because like um I don't know, it just is.
It's
It's
like
just
Peter Pan.
weird.
He's like a Peter Pan syndrome.
Yeah.
Hipster
And
Peter Pan.
yeah, and it's cute and adorable and kind of sexy in high school and maybe even in college a little bit, but then, at 30, 35, 40, you're just kind of
Yeah.
like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah. It's like you're not cooler than everyone now because you're the same person that you were 10, 20 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So wash your hair and get it and 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 stop smoking rolled cigarettes.
Yep. But I did. Okay. So I did love Lady Bird's reaction after they finished having sex. And she was like, oh, we lost our virginities to each
Yeah.
other. And he 100% said that he
He
was a
said
virgin.
that. I was so upset. I was like,
Yeah.
that's kind of like,
That's fucked up.
yeah, that's
But then
really
what makes
messed
it
up.
more fucked up is that he was like, oh, I've had like sex with 6 or 7 people. And she's like, we're in high school.
Yeah,
How does that even happen?
like you don't know. We're in high school. Like you don't know your body count. Yeah. Well, and it's funny because she's like rightfully upset and then she
Uh-huh.
tells him like, "Yeah, I'm upset because I just had a whole experience that like wasn't real."
Yeah. I never said that to you. I never said that. And it's like, no, no, boy, you did.
It's literally on film.
It's literally, oh man. Oh, it was like that. It was like things guys say in the heat of passion to make you feel better, but they're not true. I don't even know where or why or how that began, but that shit needs to stop.
Yeah. Also, to be honest, it's kind of like I don't know. I don't know why we would feel that it's more comfortable. I guess when you're a virgin to know that the other person is a virgin. I don't know. For me personally, it just wasn't. I don't think that was something that would have made me feel better or worse about it. But
Mm.
isn't it? It's such a weird thing to think that, like, why does that make you feel more willing to do it with them? I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't know. I wasn't a person who had sex in high school. I thought it was stupid.
Oh, well, I didn't have sex with Luke until I was out of high school, but he
Yeah.
was still in high school.
Oh.
So I guess I shouldn't incriminate myself.
Do you want me to cut that out? I will.
I mean, what's the statute of limitations on that?
I have no idea. But like my thought process was we have the rest of our lives. Of course, I'm in high school. I don't know. I don't know what dating's going to be like. I'm
Yeah.
delusional because of pop culture and rom-coms, right? So, I'm thinking I have the rest of my life to deal with this, that, and I'm terrified of diseases and like our health class. I feel like all our health class was like, here's a disease you will get from sex. So I'm just like, I don't understand why anybody want to do that if my chances of getting this are like 40%, kind of stuff. So I just definitely
I
the
was scared, but because I had dropped out of high school, I mean, not high school, whoa, I dropped out of art school And then I came back to Sacramento for one semester. That's when I was bored out of my mind because I came back to Sacramento and I also felt like a failure because all my friends were out having the time of their life. And I was like, I'm depressed and I hate college.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I guess this is what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that that's the point in life where I found out I was pregnant. See, this is self-destruction is bad. Not and listen, listeners at home, you know I love my son. I've talked about how he's my favorite. I'm just saying, listen to your children when they say that they're bored and restless. So I went to see Lady Bird with my mom at the State Theater, which is a local cinema house that has been in Modesto since 1934. It's kind of a big deal.
It's like the Tower of Modesto.
Yeah, they renovated it a couple years ago. I think right before the economic downturn.
And then they're like, shit, no one going to the movies.
Yep. And it's got an Art Deco vibe, which is so fun. Like they really stayed it true to that era with the design. And it's definitely a welcome time warp. And in 2017, I was like I mentioned, I was in a very strange place emotionally. So I had been unemployed for over a year, and many of the people I went to summer arts programs and had thriving careers. Like I said, they were winning Emmys, they were getting, on these big named shows. And I was just like, the fuck am I doing with my life right now? I'm unemployed and in grad school. Yay me. I was jealous. I'm just going to throw it out there. I was 100% jealous of everybody. And I'm not as jealous anymore. I'm going to say that, like, my jealousy hasn't fully subsided when I watch, read the articles for like the creative arts Emmys, and I read names that I know, and I'm just like, good for you. Also, fuck you.
You're like, hello.
Also, I'm proud of you, but also shit.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Like most teens, my parents and I didn't speak the same language. And by the time we finally agreed on what was an appropriate next step for my life, it was too late. I had managed to find a way to self-destruct, taking my future with me. Lady Bird isn't just a coming of age story. It really, truly is a love letter.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree.
Yeah. Amy, I just thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited that you're here.
Well, when you asked for someone to talk about Lady Bird, I was like, I must talk about it because it was my life and your life and our life. And this has been really fun.
Yes. And friends, if you haven't listened to the other episodes Amy has joined us for, she was here in season 2 for our Asian American representation episode. It's a great conversation. Every time I listen to it, I just think, oh, dang it, Amy, we have such great conversations.
Yes, we do.
And then also Freaks and Geeks. So go back and listen to Freaks and Geeks as well, because that show, oh my God. Anyway, can you please remind everybody where they can find you if they want to keep up with you online?
Sure. So the best places to find me are on Instagram or Twitter, and that would be at the Amy Albertson. That's AMYALBERTSON. And that's the best way to find me.
And friends will link to her socials in the show notes to make it a little bit easier for you to find her. And that's it. I'm just so glad you were here. I feel like we could have a whole, we could just have our own show.
I mean, yeah, we could probably just go on like a tangent of like, we started with Lady Bird, right? But then it leads into like talking about this, talking about that person. They're in this movie. Oh, did you see that? Like, wow, we really could.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in, y'all. Until next time.